Welcome to our small panel today here at ACT. It's Autism and Micro-Budget Independent Filmmaking. My name is Matt Swift. Like I said, I'm the program coordinator for film studies at Ohio State University. I help advise students. I do career planning. I used to teach film theory and film production as well. But with the career planning side of things, that's what I do a lot more of today. I help students with internships, things like that. And then I assist my partner here. She can introduce herself with her things that she does. And then we were connected with Audrey several years ago to work on a project, which is what we'll talk about here today. So you want to go ahead and...
Yeah, I'm Audrey Todd, and before I became a psychologist, I was in acting for about 21 years, and I left and to pursue psychology, and I never really thought I was going to look back. And then my son was diagnosed with autism in '06, and we did a lot of early intervention. And around the same time that I started hearing about the Shakespeare and Autism project, and I became kind of almost reeled back into the world of the arts after being away from it for about 20 years, I started thinking about, which we'll get into in a little bit in a different slide, kind of entering into that with Shakespeare from like an adapted arts perspective. And then I always liked writing. And I was also an English major, so I had this kind of idea, and I'll talk about the process later, but that's kind of like my background. So then I started Food for Good Thought, because at that time when I started it, my son, I could only get him to attend to anything with me if it was in the kitchen, either baking or cooking. So we have a gluten-free bakery that's like the vehicle for the supported employment. Thankfully, since then, he has a lot other interests besides that, but that's kind of the beginning. And then we've used Food for Good Thought as an umbrella for all sorts of creative careers, people with autism, and other types of careers besides, the cooking. So.
And I guess I'm Nikki Swift, and I'm just a local filmmaker. I do all kinds of things. I do data management for a local gallery.
She does a lot more than that. She's just very, humble about it. So she basically keeps me in line, I can tell you that. It keeps me doing the things that I need to do. So basically we can go ahead and move on. So if you haven't heard about our film, we've been making it for a little while. It's called Those Who Spring of Me. It was originally written by Audrey and farmed around to try to find some people who'd be willing to take on this task of making this film here locally. That is a story about two people coming of age who, one that's nonverbal and both of them with autism, who want to get married and have a baby. And just the melodrama around going to his parents and asking the question and considering whether they should say yes or no, and do they even have the right to answer that question or not. Just the dilemmas that come up in a family drama that I think we all face in some way, shape, or form. We were approached originally because I work with Aaron with VSA Ohio regularly with the Real Abilities Film Festival. If you don't know about that, they put that on several times a year. It's now every few months. They do a free screening on Wednesday nights of films about or for people with disabilities. So I help judge and curate some of the films. And they said, well, why don't you talk to the Swifts? They do some different stuff. And so she brought the script to us, and then we've been working on it since about 2016, slowly. We'll talk about why it's taking so long. That'll be a big part of the discussion today, I think. So, but I kind of gave you the plot here. We do have teasers and trailers online, so I thought we'd take a second and just kind of show you the teaser here.
You guys want the lights out for that?
I think it'll be okay with the screen.
It's not going to work over there. It didn't pop up over there.
Yeah. So you'll have to move it.
It won't let me. Oh, yeah, there you go.
And you can find a lot of this information through the card that we gave you with your packet today.
Don't look for a lover when you only need a friend. The furrows in your eyes are evidence you don't pretend. Like an actor out on stage, you don't need an invitation. Your heart's a bombardier with a personal invasion. Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. Remember when we climbed the dune and pitched our tent and slept till nighttime? I don't recall if you were after me, but I loved you. This retrospection only deepens my conviction that we're both under the spell of unattainable affection. Uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. Don't look for a friend when you only need a lover. The dimples on your cheeks are evidence we're getting stronger. Your face is lovely, your eyes so cozy. I'm falling into your love. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. I'm your lover, you're my friend, and we're both wrapped up in a complicated rhythm. Uh-huh.
So on the handouts here, feel free to take some notes. We'll have a Q&A at the end. I'm sure that we're just watching that. Maybe you have some questions already or something. We will leave time at the end where we can ask questions and stuff. I think what we'll move, there's a few images missing. I apologize for that if you notice. They're just photos. You can find them, most of them online. We have a pretty active Facebook page and other things where we're posting constant photos of the production. Those are specifically the ones that didn't show up for some reason. So on the printout, they will be in the PowerPoint here today though. So, all right. We'll talk about why that says in theaters 2017. Yeah, here it is 2018 and that still hasn't happened yet. So there's two very specific reasons.
It's not going away.
I kind of feel like most projects in life are like that, but.
Yeah, we had two specific hiccups that got in the way. But we'll get to that. We'll go ahead and let Audrey start. We can talk about how did this whole thing get started?
Sure. So what happened was my son's diagnosis of autism was pretty devastating to me for a long period of time, and I viewed the future as fairly bleak, and not recognizing that of course you never know what's going to happen and that it never goes as planned, which I already had recognized that part. But it was probably a good 5 years ago where he met Tatiana, and they're still essentially boyfriend and girlfriend. It's not real developed in terms of a typical relationship. They went to the learning spectrum together, an autism scholarship school. He's mostly homeschooled now, and she lives in Lancaster now. But they have remained in contact for 5 years and said they love each other. And my son types that she's the greatest girl in the world. And so early on, I was very stunned that oh, this could actually happen, because I thought that it would never happen for him. Even though I knew people with disabilities dated and got married, I somehow didn't think that our family would apply to that. So when we met her, I was, it was kind of groundbreaking for me. I mean, to say it was a delightful surprise is an understatement. I put a lot of, I thought about it a lot and probably thought about it too much. And so because I started thinking, wow, this could happen, and maybe the world is more wide open, maybe anything could happen, right? And so I started thinking, well, what would happen if this developed further and they're older, and something that seemed closed off to him in my mind before would be opened up? And what would, and so the script writing was a kind of about me. I already knew what I would do as a person, but sorting out, if they asked, can we have a child, sorting out what's the appropriate response and what's how. Any response you take, there's going to be people who would disagree. So I kind of wrote that as a dilemma and as a conflict, and I like writing about conflicts. And one of the things that I decided to do early on, because for better or for worse, I dive into projects, and I rarely read directions when I set things up. I just dive in, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not. But in this instance, I knew I was self-conscious about the script, and I didn't want to do anything more on it after a couple years besides contact them, because I knew that it would change. And also, I didn't want to sit on it too long and get self-conscious or gun-shy. So I just said, just contact them and start it. And then you don't know where it's going to end up, but just start it, right? And so sometimes I do that, and it's a big mistake. I think in this situation, it's worked out very well, because then I'm not self-conscious about it now, and I feel like I've got great partners with me, and it's been very rewarding. So that's kind of like been my process before I met them. So.
And one of the first things that happened to write, so she's writing the script before we were even brought on board. You were able to identify 2 people kind of in the local community that you could work with, you thought would be good surrogates to play the characters.
Yes. So PJ, we knew from Food for Good Thought. He was in one of our first summer programs. Both of these actors have autism. And I picked him because even though my son has a lot of intensity, he's very sweet, and so is PJ. And my son is named Liam, and PJ's character is Will. Liam's the last 4 letters of William, and Will's obviously the first 4. And then I picked Kelsey because she was also at the learning spectrum with Liam and Tatiana, and we named her something similar to Tatiana. I picked her because of her vitality and enthusiasm, which is a lot like how Tatiana is. She's very unbridled and unpredictable. And that, even though it has its problems, makes it much more interesting than anything you could ever have planned. So it's been very interesting. She remains very full of vitality and enthusiasm.
Yeah, one of the instances where she's talking about anything that could be planned at first, that teaser there is one of the handful of first scenes that we actually started full-on production with. And she really likes cats, Kelsey does. And cats seem to really like her a lot, too. And we're sitting there shooting a scene, we get through 1 take, we get through a 2nd take, and then suddenly this white cat comes out of somebody's backyard, and she's like, oh! And just loses it, because this cat just like comes out of nowhere, and she gives it this huge long name.
Snowbell.
Yeah, it was like Snowbell Princess something.
Like, and it just becomes attached to her. And so we're like, well, we got to get on filming, right? And this cat just follows us throughout the whole day. And so then we're setting up the shot, and the next thing you know, they come up, and the cat's just like, hello, and they keep moving, and the cat was like, oh, and the cat just turned out, and we're like, oh my gosh, that is total magic. Like, you couldn't have asked for that. And I know that you can't ask for that because I have friends and colleagues at the Columbus College of Art and Design, and that same day, they were out in the countryside actually trying to shoot a scene with a cat. And they spent 8 hours, and they still could not get what they needed. And I was like, oh, that feels so good. So, like, there's, like, the two actors bring a lot to the film and their characters and their kind of vitality and stuff. So it really makes it. And we'll talk about how we end up shooting the film because of that here.
So through the grants that we have received from GCAC and the Ohio Arts Council, we're able to pay both of our actors with autism, since our mission is, is employment.
So the film ends up being an autistic employment opportunity. So if you want to bit it there. So the next stage was just that she contacted us, and then it was up to us to find other people to be able to help.
And decide how we were going to do this.
And how we were going to do it. Yeah, do you want to?
Well, we went through the script, we decided what was doable and what needed worked out a little bit, and then we ran a test shot. And we realized that lighting was going to be an issue, and actually the script was going to be an issue, just scripting them. And so, did you jump ahead?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what you're talking about.
Back on. No.
There you go, accommodations.
There we go.
Yeah, there's one of the tests.
So this is the test shot, and we couldn't get them to look up at all because the lights were just too much. And so we realized that we needed to shoot outside as much as possible and limit the indoor. And we realized that we needed a shoestring crew because we couldn't have a bunch of people intimidating the actors. So, and so we have this great scene. They're making bouquets, and we found out how over the top she was in that instance because she cut her finger on one of the thorn or something, and he had to put a Band-Aid on it for her. Aww. And so we realized that we could utilize her ups and downs in that way to create scenarios that he would have to take care of her in some ways. So.
And it's just natural. So this shot here of him putting the Band-Aid on and all that, it's literally, we were just setting up cameras and documenting and saying, okay, just make a bouquet of flowers. That was their only cue. And they started putting stuff together, the thing happened, and they're like, ouch, Band-Aid. Audrey gets Band-Aid, and then PJ's like, oh, and pulls it apart, puts it on her face, and this whole thing happens that they're just acting natural, and it was complete magic for the kind of relationship that we were looking to portray of these two people who were negotiating themselves and each other and as a couple in a way. So it worked out really, really well in that instance. One of the other things we had to focus on, go the other way, there you go, was just the accommodations, right? So Nikki talked a little bit about having a large crew, but then also having a lot of equipment around. So it took a little bit of time for Kelsey to be comfortable with having people touch her, put body mics on her. She's the main person. PJ's character is nonverbal, and so the body mics and things aren't as important, but for her, we need to have a microphone close to her at all times just in case. And so Nikki and her have formed a relationship where Nikki works with her to get her what she needs, and then also if there's times where things are stressful, she goes to Nikki and they work together to try to alleviate those issues. And so we've been able to work that out. And I feel like I've formed a pretty good bond with PJ as well. So we kind of split up in that way, and it works out. And then at this current time, it's basically me and Nikki. And then we have, we earlier had a production assistant that was working with us, but she had to move on to some other production opportunities. And so now we're working with Danny Bean, a local filmmaker who's an alumni from OSU. We've known him for a long time, and he helps us with production. It's basically the three of us. And a big part of taking Audrey's script and translating it to this was understanding also, can you, when it comes to accommodations, the reason why, like there's two really great shows on right now. There's one on Netflix that's about autism and love and stuff. The actor, you know, they've just hired an actor to make this happen, right? And now there's a new one that's like Doogie Howser.
The
with
Good Doctor.
Awesome, right?
And Atypical.
Yeah, right, yeah. So there's this dilemma that happens. I work with Real Abilities Film Festival a lot. We see this, and the conversation comes up a lot where, you know, A, there's representation of people with various disabilities. B, there are getting actors with those disabilities or a disability in any way to be able to play those roles. Here in the U.S., film is a for-profit risk management venture. It's a capitalist venture, and time is money. And accommodation adds time. I think we all know that accommodation adds time. And when it comes to things like you have a 14-hour day and 2 weeks to shoot a film, accommodations are very hard to come by. Even typical people, your accommodations are ignored if you need anything. And so there's a very specific reason why it's difficult to make this kind of film, and it's because of the way that production works on a film and time and the money needed and things. And so we had to figure that out. We were like, okay, these people have lives that they have to live so that they can function within the world that they have. So what does that mean? That means that they can't do 14-hour days. That means we can't ask them to do 3 weeks straight. That means we shoot for 2 to 3 hours, and we shoot when they have time in their schedule, which is, you know, every few Sundays or so, which is what's drawn out the process a little bit. Also, we figured out the scripting. There is a script, there is dialogue, but within that, it has to be much more loose. It's not like, you know, in the film Les Mis, you know, actress, she does a take 86 times to get the song right. We can't ask them to do that. Like, we couldn't do it in 2 hours.
It would overwhelm them too.
And it would overwhelm them as well. And it would be very hard to get the exact same response because of environmental cues and other things. And so a lot of the film is being shot in almost more of a documentary style, because we realize, okay, if something like the cat scene happens, all cameras that we would possibly ever want, every angle, has to be thought of at all times. Because if something magic like that happens with the cat, we have to have the right shot. We can't say, hey cat, can you do that again? No, let's do that. Right? We have some instances of this. We have a scene that's a picnic, and you know, the bottle, it's Coca-Cola. Kelsey likes Coca-Cola right now. And we're like, well, we can't show Coca-Cola, so we have to put it in a bottle, and it's a bottle with a pressured top. PJ opens it, and it's like, really big, and we're all like, oh, and we jump. And luckily, we had 4 cameras running at that time. So we have his face, we have her face, we have their face, and we have a documentary of like all of us being like, oh, like jumping, because we have all these cameras running. We chose to go with that style just because A, it was going to alleviate the kind of needs for stressing out the actors to get the performance right over and over and over again, so we could get a more natural feel to them. But then also, because of my film history background, I was able to go back and look at certain filmmakers and find filmmakers who did this on purpose. That someone like a Japanese filmmaker, like Akira Kurosawa, he shot with 3 cameras at all times, right? And once I got to that mode, I was like, well, we're not gonna move the cameras much either, so let's make another stylistic choice. His predecessor, Ozu, he shot at 36 inches high. So you're gonna notice, like when you watch the teaser here today, everything, like their heads were all up here in the top of the frame. That's because all of our cameras are at exactly like 36 inches tall. It provides a child's kind of point of view looking up at this story. I like to think of it as they're asking this question about having a child, and in a way, this could be their child that they're thinking about what the story might have been like.
When did you come to that parallel thinking?
After this first attempt.
Yeah, after after doing this test, we realized that, okay.
We have to standardize things. We have to make them
Yeah.
work across the board. So the lenses are all set to.
There's also the lenses are all the same length of 42 millimeter, so that then that way we're not distorting their faces in certain ways that we can't correct for. There are all these other things that you have to worry about with lenses and other stuff. So this test made us realize, okay, we have to just come up with a very strict standard of how we're going to shoot this film, so that it alleviates a lot of the accommodations that we need to worry about. And I was able to look at film history and find sources for it and say, okay, there's someone else who has done this for a certain reason, because they wanted to focus more, like Kurosawa did it because he wanted to focus more on the acting. He would set up his cameras and then have the actors do the scene over and over and over and over, and then he would hit go on the cameras once, so that it was perfect one time, you're done.
It's like necessity is the mother of invention, right? Where these issues helped us create our choices that helped with the creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the figuring that kind of stuff out was very, very important, which is, it's one reason we could shoot one, maybe 2 scenes a day because of the setup needed, small amount of people.
And also making them change thought is okay, we're going from picnic indoors to a music scene. That doesn't really work for them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't change thought as quickly as we need them
And
to.
the transitions,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to only do a scene or 2 at the most, and
Yeah.
they need to tie in.
Yeah, most productions, if you're doing a 14-hour day, you may do 8-10 scenes, and you would be able to transition to things that aren't even connected. You might shoot the beginning of the film and then the end of the film and all this stuff, and it's very disorienting. And it's disorienting for everybody. And so this is where we need to film things that kind of connect together, so that they understand where we want them to move to the next thing, so they can stay in character, right? And the real plus is for both of them. Like Audrey had said, Kelsey is very vibrant. PJ is very mild, and somehow they bring each other closer to being similar. She had a very stressful day once, and we were down in a ravine in a park shooting a scene of them walking through, and she was just not very happy. She wanted to go home. She was getting very tired, and PJ just grabs her hand, and we're like, hey, we're ready to go. And he grabs her hand and shakes his head at her, and she just dials it in, and they shoot the scene, and then we stop camera, and then she kind of just lets it all out again, and he grabs her hand, and then so there's something about the two of them that really help each other as well. So, I want to make sure we have plenty of time. So,
They knew each other before this, or no?
They didn't. I just knew them from 2 different,
yeah.
sites.
And so one thing that we wanted to point out is that the biggest thing about being able to make some kind of film is, if you have a camera or something, you can do anything you want. And I would encourage anybody to do that. I make lots of other kinds of videos and films with my cell phone. I tell students this all the time. If you're interested in making some kind of film or video about what you're doing, especially if it's a documentary style film or something more artistic, just use what you have, and you can do a lot with it. Now, the thing about a narrative film is it takes time, and it's story, and we're very hard on narrative film. If it's telling a story and there's actors, we need it to be believable for us, or we turn off. We'll forgive an art film or a documentary film for bad audio or somebody said the wrong thing. But if you're telling a story and it doesn't seem right, there's something about us that's just no. right?
It gets boring.
Yeah, it gets boring and we disconnect, and the dream, we call it in film, we call it the like fictitious dream of the story. It doesn't work anymore, and that usually requires some kind of funding to make things happen. And one thing that we were lucky enough to be able to do is make the decision, is do we go and look for funders or do we look for grants? And by moving this into the realm of being an autistic employment opportunity, we were able to target specific organizations like the Ohio Arts Council, VSA Ohio, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Puffin West, they're all listed there. The really important thing is if you want to make a film about something, look out there and see who would your audience be first, right? The way that you get a good Indiegogo or Kickstarter or something like that is if you know people who would be interested in your film ahead of time, and you say, okay, well, I'm going to make a film about something that you already like, let me tap into your audience because they might enjoy it. Would they be willing to help sponsor it in some way? And that's what we were able to do with this film, is get a lot of support from the autistic community and the different organizations that already support that endeavor in some way. And the big thing is this film is, it's about someone who's nonverbal and is going to be using assistive speaking technology. There's been some documentaries made about this, but there ain't a whole lot of narrative films, especially when people that have autism playing the roles. And so this is kind of a groundbreaking thing, which is another way that we were able to get some of these organizations to help support with some of the funding.
Which creates more challenges for the filming because of the timing of using a communication device is not back and forth in the tempo that we speak.
Yeah.
So it's challenging from an editing perspective.
Yeah, and we're lucky, both Nikki and I, we have been filmmakers for, since 2003, we've been running Nicholas Cinematographics. It's mostly what Nikki does. I'm more of the shooter, she's more of the editor. We can do both, which works really great for a team, but a lot of the magic will end up on her doorstep of making all this work and making the hard decisions. She spent the last week basically like putting together scenes from the film so that we could get some of these pictures and stuff for the presentation today. And we have one scene where it's the morning after they've asked about having a baby, and Will and Sybil, which is Audrey's character, are sitting there having breakfast, and he has prepared a whole argument on his tablet, speaking device, and papers, and is like ready to confront her about like, I need an answer. We need to go to the jewelry store, right? But it's with an assistive speaking device. So you can imagine, you're like, Mom, I'm mad at you. Go, Mom, I'm mad at you. And then she has to be like, okay, I understand what you're saying. And then there's a little bit of like you feel this tension, awkwardness of like, how do you even like have this kind of difficult conversation at this point? Like this person can ask this question, but but the limitation is communicating it in the way that we would all expect. It's going to be a very unique experience, and
that has enough momentum for us to stay in it. We could make it appear realistic, but to have enough momentum for us to, want to watch it.
Yes. With two people who would be verbally communicating, this is a scene that would last maybe 40 seconds, 50 seconds. Right now, the raw cut of the scene is around 18 minutes. Because of the typing. That's really long.
Most devices are clumsy in
They're
real
clumsy.
Yep. Yes.
And frustrating.
And if you take any of that out, you're not doing it justice.
Right.
Yeah, so we have to somehow find a way to negotiate the barrier of showing the awkwardness of using such a device and the like physical mannerisms and gesturing, which PJ has been observing Audrey's son, which is I didn't even expect it. We said go, and he basically mimicked something he did that morning. And I was like, oh, did you see, like, he was actually watching Liam this morning and basically just redid what he did. that was amazing.
Wow.
And we're doing it in my house, so then it keeps costs down. It's user-friendly for all of us. And then Liam's there for PJ to be able to watch, and then we can use the house as we so choose, so then it gives us more freedom.
Yeah, and we have to, you know, because of that we have to, do you show him typing for a few minutes and then you cut away and maybe have the voice say it so that you're not spending 10 minutes to type a sentence or two. There's a lot of decisions in the post-production, which we hope to start like around Christmas, that will need to be made.
Yeah.
So.
And with the micro budget piece, you have to obviously, like, having a kitchen sink drama is the cheapest because you can do it in your house. You know, if you were doing, you know, a rendition of Godzilla, it wouldn't be like a micro budget, right? So, you know, kitchen sink dramas are my favorite, so it would make sense that I'd write something like that. But then it was also very cost effective because there's no rent, you know, to use my house, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're saying micro budget, can you just give like how much, what is a micro budget compared to a maximum
So
budget?
we're talking about like, if anybody remembers the movie Blair Witch, right? We're like $10,000 kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're functioning at right around that level where we've got 5 or 6 organizations that were able to give a few $1,000s each to help support this endeavor.
Honestly, micro budgets are now $1 million, so
Right,
we're
yeah.
functioning low.
Yeah, we're like, man, there was just a film that was shot here in Columbus with a name actor that they considered a micro budget film that I think they had like $300,000 to work with. I think he was donating a lot of his time with a producer credit or something so that he didn't charge them. It starred Corbin Bernstein from
yeah.
Bernstein
Law
from
School.
Psycho,
I know, like,
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Early.
Yeah, earlier than that, what?
Yeah, so, and he played the USA show Psych that was on the air for like 8 years. He's the father in that show. If you haven't seen it, it's a very funny show.
And we're using me and my real husband to play my husband. And so we're paying ourselves the same amount as the actors with autism, and so then there's like parity and equality, but then we're keeping costs down because we're not paying real actors, right? So even though I have a background in acting, my husband doesn't, so we're using like a non-actor to portray, but then it's also obviously meaningful to us personally to be portraying that. So.
Yeah, and a big decision you make on a smaller budget film is, do you pay the people and don't worry about the equipment? Or do you worry about the equipment and not pay the people and hope your film does great so you can pay them later, right? We made the decision because we could acquire grants that we would pay the people first, pay the actors, make it this employment opportunity. And so, you know, we're actually keeping costs down as well. So instead of us going out and buying a bunch of cameras and other equipment, we decided we could use a lot of, this is actually one of the cameras that shoots the film, right? We're using these smaller $500-600 cameras. There's multiples of them. If somebody were to bump into one and it breaks, you run to Best Buy, you get another one, right? And so we're just charging a small amount for our labor when we're actually on set. Not any planning time, anything like that. And we didn't take those funds and transition them right back into more equipment and other stuff for the film. We started shooting the easy scenes first, things that weren't going to require a lot of lights, a lot of mics, other kinds of stuff, so that actually the grant funding process as the film moves forward provides a little additional funding so we could slowly build up the more and more equipment for the film needed.
But that didn't also just function for gear and it functioned for the actors, get them into their roles, get them comfortable, get them, and so do the easy scenes first, and then they're used to it when we come to the harder scenes.
Yeah, so the big scene that's going to happen in the next few months is them actually asking the question, which is going to be very difficult because it's Audrey comes home from work, she's had a bad day, the husband comes home from work, he's got some bad news from a doctor. They're talking, and then the next thing you know, here comes the couple, and it's like, hey, we want to have a baby. And that all has to happen, same costumes, same haircuts, it has to happen all in one time, very close together. so that everything looks similar, so it can patch together.
And to create the urgency.
And the urgency, and that'll be, we'll just do nothing but that scene that day, and it might have to go a little over the 2-hour mark, which will be difficult, but by starting with the easier, slower scenes and slowly building up to having more and more dialogue, using the assistive speaking device more, like the actors are getting better and better and better at doing this and
More
being in their
comfortable with each other,
characters.
more comfortable with us, more
Yeah.
comfortable with the gear,
Yep.
like,
The
amount
picnic
of
scene,
stuff
we were
happening.
able to actually do full-on mics and lights for the first time. We were just like, it's kind of dark in here, let's just set them up and see what happens. And they were a little uncomfortable at first, but then it wiggled out. Like they were able to do what they needed to do, and we didn't have to worry about it as much.
Some of it is just acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance in what's going to happen in the scene, acceptance in, like, it may be a little dark.
Yep.
It may be,
Yep. And this is a great picture of Nikki. We're actually sitting at like you go back one, in the top corner. We're sitting at Bob Evans because we're planning out the scenes. Basically, I don't have the photo because I moved it off to another computer, but so we have the script, we have the notepad, we have a Google Drive full of all of our productions, notes, and all this stuff. And then on our door in one of our rooms, we have sticky notes with all the scenes, like a title for each scene written on them. And there's like a mark about if this scene's done, this scene's not done, and we can move them around and stuff. And we have to change them a little bit occasionally. We think about, oh, well, could we do this? Could we do that? Because we need a little filler here or something. We shot this scene, but then I feel like it needs an additional something underneath of it or whatever. So we're constantly adding a few little things here and there to make things work out.
What was cool about, we were gonna do a picnic outside, but it was rainy. So then we said, let's do the picnic inside, which is already kind of interesting, right? And so even though we didn't intend for it to be that way, adding lighting at that point, I'm realizing it's just now as we're talking, was like a shaping type of thing, like in a classic ABA thing, which I don't generally think in that way, but it was like a shaping and adding small amounts of increased complexity so that then it's not threatening because it's, seems almost imperceptible of a change.
Yeah. It is very helpful that Audrey has a lot of experience in this world and comes from understanding the kind of models and other things, the coaching and other things that need to happen. And so, like, we're fairly lucky in this where we have a lot of people with a lot of expertise in a small group. Whereas if you were to try to take this on and just go out and hire people, you may have to hire several people to have one person who knows how to deal with people with certain accommodation needs, and then somebody else who knows how to edit, someone else who knows how to shoot, someone else who knows how to light, you need all these different people. So we were very lucky here. We were able to, this is just some photos that we put together of various things. The middle one on the this one right here on the porch, this is actually Kelsey, it's another cat whisperer that we included that. We have the documentary footage.
shooting, and we were walking back from the ravine, and she's like, oh, cat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see at the top right there, well, this is us coming back to Audrey's house. Like, we're carrying gear and everything, but PJ and Kelsey are holding hands. Like walking up the sidewalk, like they're kind of still in character when they're near each other. Like it's just I was like, I'm gonna turn on the camera, just kind of hold it while I'm walking and get footage of this because this is like
It's a tender
it's
relationship.
so great.
Yeah,
there is a tender relationship. Another thing about the funding, just really quick, is so this scene up here in the top left. Later today, AJ Vanderelli will actually be here talking about art and everything. That's AJ there. We were able to approach her and say, hey, we need a scene. This could seem like a cafe, an art shop or something where Audrey needs to have this conversation with a friend who is going to be a little bit more supportive of the decision of saying yes. And AJ's like, okay, yeah, I think I could do that. And she let us rearrange her gallery, and there was already art on the wall. And so there's local art there. But then also an important thing that we're doing is each of the locations outside of, well, we're even doing it with Audrey's house, but outside of her house is that we're doing what's called an establishing shot. This is a really great way to provide free marketing to get people to help support things. Like we need a jewelry store at one point too. So we'll go and we'll do this shot in the jewelry store, but we'll make sure we'll also get images outside of the jewelry store. There's signage and other stuff that could be included in the film to orient you to the space, but then it also says, hey, here's this boutique little jewelry store in Columbus, Ohio. It was part of this film that's free advertising and promotion.
The film commissioner mentioning, hey, we were a location in this,
Yes.
so it goes both ways.
Exactly.
But what's cool too, as Matt's talking, I'm realizing we have one of our funders here through the Ohio Arts Council, that AJ also has been an individual artist and has received funding through the Ohio Arts Council. So it's kind of meta because we're showcasing then her art that has been helped through the Ohio Arts Council through another, it's kind of like the Russian dolls or something.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and it's, no, I guess one more, where's the grant, the funding thing? One more. So that's actually the outside exterior of the Vanderelli room.
That
So
many
like,
people here may know, yes.
that will be a part of the film. So when the scene opens up, you'll see the Vanderelli room, and then we'll move to inside the Vanderelli room. And so there will actually be this. You could get this feel of Columbus and her space, and but that's a good way. Like if you need a coffee shop or you need something else, you just say, hey, I'm making a film. It's a very low budget film. We don't have a lot of funding, but I'd be willing to like put your name on the film, tag you in social media, do any kind of other promotion for your location. If we could shoot the film there, right? And a lot of places in Columbus are okay with that, especially if you've got a good cause. You know, some of our students have trouble with it because they don't approach it with the right kind of dialogue, and they're a little forceful, and they're like, I need a space, like, and so the spaces aren't as they're not as helpful. But I do have lots of students that are just like, yeah, we need to shoot this scene in a restaurant, and they'll get a restaurant, let them come in right when they're opening up before they get busy, and they'll be able to shoot a scene or something, and then they put like special thanks and a sign and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's increasing your local support and your local following too, so it's mutually beneficial for both parties.
So, I mean, we covered a lot of stuff here. We could cover a lot more, but I want to leave some time for questions and stuff from the audience. This is our poster. You can find those at Spring of Me. It's also hashtag Autism Film. And we use hashtags like CBUS Makes Film. I didn't include any of those on here, but there is a video that will be posted online, and also this live feed, it looks like it's still working, is on Facebook.
It may still be working.
It says live in the top corner, I hope so.
It actually crashed
You should be able to
last time I
find
tried,
that.
so-
But I just want to point out a few things we've learned so far. I mean, it can be very challenging to produce a film quickly when you have to consider accommodations. So if you're interested in making some kind of film, you have to be patient. Remember, like, this is something you want to do. It should be fun. You know, it's going to take some time to do it. And then specifically to talk about autism, one thing that we've found is just let the actors be themselves. These two actors are just bringing so much to this film that we could have never expected to happen, just from letting them do what they need to do and not feel like, well, this is how I think Will should be. You know, you need to do it this way. No, like, they're actually developing their own character for themselves.
And on that,
they have a lot more to them than you would think.
Yeah. I mean, like what most of us know in this field, and even with typical infants, that typical infants know more than they can express or have more skills than they can reveal, is that Kelsey and PJ have showed many more skills than you would have seen in another setting. So that they're really rising to the occasion and demonstrating their individuality too and their skills.
Yeah.
And they're not pretending to be autistic.
Right.
No,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're just
And this-
being themselves.
This is the picnic scene, and this is just them reacting to each other. This is freeform.
Yeah. They're eating some pizza and they just, having a nice little scene where, he decides he wants to tell her that he loves her jacket. And when he goes like this, she's like, oh. and decides to do it too, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, we couldn't have expected that to happen.
Well, my cat's in
So-
that one too, right?
Yeah.
My cat.
So it's
I think the
probably
cat
not
and 2
something-
dogs were right there in that one, but.
So,
We have a question.
yeah, so go ahead.
I see the symbols, are PJ and Kelsey deaf?
No, they both have autism.
Right,
Uh, But the male character is nonverbal.
Non-verbal, okay.
So he's nonverbal, he uses assistive speaking device,
Okay.
but of course, anybody who's works in that world realizes that that thing's not always there and handy. So there are other things that do tapping, smelling, like they make gestures, right? And so he has a whole set of gestures.
Now, is he non-verbal as a character, or is that really him? He's actually
He is verbal, but very mild.
very mild, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, very mild.
But he has more a range of gestures than your
Gotcha.
standard nonverbal person would have. My son would not be able to do those gestures, which is
Okay.
why usually ASL doesn't work for nonverbal people, because the motor planning is impaired regardless. We haven't been real particular, we've kind of chosen our battles there,
Okay.
because to let PJ, flesh it out for himself.
Okay.
And we're not saying, don't gesture as much, we're just
Okay.
saying, go for
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So Audrey, what does Liam think of all of this?
He typed that he looks forward to inspiring more people.
Gee whiz.
And Tatiana's parents her adoptive parents are divorced. She has more like failure to thrive or reaction attachment disorder. She was adopted from Russia at 13 months. So, yes, she's been diagnosed with ASD, but it's probably more like intellectual disability and failure to thrive. But her mother, her father's in Florida, but her mother's in Lancaster. And they're very supportive and they know that this is, being done, and supportive of the idea that Liam and Tatiana have inspired this story. So.
Yeah, Liam hasn't had is he in the group scene that we did?
Yeah, he's.
So we have a group scene to get more of the community involved. There's a set of classroom lectures because the father is a professor, and it starts out with some students, and then it starts out with some younger people in the disability community, and then eventually we even invite their parents and other people to come and sit in the crowd as part of it. And so Liam ends up being part of that. But then Audrey's daughter also, there's a scene in a bakery where they come in and they order a muffin and stuff, and so we're getting like the whole family involved in the situation.
Well, we had several people with autism last December come and do a classroom scene at OSU, and many of them were very excited to be on OSU's campus and we paid each of them for their work in there too. So it was really kind of a celebratory thing, because there were some young people that were extremely excited to be at OSU. So it was very nice.
But basically, we put a film up on the screen, and then so they had something to watch as if they were in a lecture, and then we documented them watching it and doing things, and gestured a few, coached a few of them to do a few movements and other stuff, and then the lectures were recorded completely separate, and we'll kind of stitch those together.
So you said that there were 2 big stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
I know that you did like 20 in this.
So
what are
the first big stumbling block was just trying to figure out how to shoot the film because of accommodations. That's the
Right.
really, really big one. The second one is that we got about 4 months into production, and I experienced a fairly severe scooter accident, which collarbone, concussion, all kinds of stuff, and so we basically had to stop production for 8-9 months, which threw our grant processes off and a bunch of other stuff. And then, and as I like to say, is that when I hit that car, the film and a few other things popped out the other side of my head, and so it took a little while for me to be like, okay, I can see the film again. Like I know, okay, I think I know what I was doing. Because we had this script and we were trying to make it, broaden it out and do things with it, and I had the driving vision. She was going to edit it, I was going to do the driving vision of what it was going to look like and how it was going to formulate. And when I hit that car, I just didn't have it anymore. And I had to try to get through my own things and find the film again as well, which we're pretty much back on track now.
That's a
That
whole
takes some time.
film unto itself.
Right,
It is,
right.
it
We have
is.
the documentary camera that's going too, and I had decided that I don't really care how long it takes. I mean, we have final reports to write, and we have to write reports for our funders, but I thought, well, why rush it? It takes however long it takes, and most of life we can't do that, but I said, well, why not do that in my mind with this? And they've been more eager to finish, and I'm enjoying the process, so I'm like, whatever, because we don't know what the product will be, but why don't I enjoy the process, right?
Yeah.
And then it's been meaningful for them.
The major thing at this point to try to get it at least kind of wrapped up is we're less than a quarter of a way from being over, and I would hate for it to proceed too much into the winter, because in Ohio, filming in Ohio is tough. The weather, that's been a big deterrent for us. We want to shoot a picnic and then suddenly it's raining. You can't be outside, like, oh my gosh. And then once it gets cold and snowy, it's very difficult. And so I want to get, if we can get the major production done this year, it means it's not another winter where hairs grow, people get taller, people change wardrobes, and people change, right? You want a consistency, and that's the main thing now, is to just try to get these last few scenes done so we can move into editing over the summer and maybe try to do a little bit more fundraising to cover that at that point.
Then do you have what is your show it ideally real abilities, or do you have,
So we've already talked to the VSA Ohio about making sure we can get it into real abilities once it's done. I would think next year is the goal. I don't really, I think he's already done a lot of the dailies kind of editing. It's really making the harder choices at this point once we get more scenes into place. And just deciding if there's a few other scenes we may have to reshoot. There are a few things that we may have to do. But besides that, I would think that by the summer we would be able to have at least a good product we could show them.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like the idea, and I'll defer to them since they know much more about this than me, of applying to a few different festivals.
Oh, yeah.
Because then there really is more of not just an employment opportunity for our actors with autism, there's a whole interpersonal opportunity, right? And there's a real growth that could occur with that kind of exposure. And I believe you just kind of set someone off in some direction. You don't know which way it's going to go, but it's going to go one way or the other, right? And so to bring them to any of these festivals would be, could be life-altering for them and would definitely help develop their brain too.
We really see it as an educational opportunity. We're looking at 60 to 80-minute film and then a 30-minute documentary. We are gonna sit everybody down and have them headshot, talk to the camera, ask them questions, and then be able to feed in all of this documentary footage of the filmmaking process. So that it has an educational component. So yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because I also think it's important for the community, the film community as a whole, to see how you can use actors who have a disability to play a character who has a disability, and that translates into a larger, broader sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, I know the challenges are there mainly because of the bottom line and cost, but this is a brilliant example of ways to accommodate, and that's
So we've talked about, I'm not a real detailed person, but they're much more detailed, letting the continuity elements not be as big of a deal because we have to choose our battles type of thing.
Yep.
But what you had said makes me, when I was reading some of these articles and writing different grant applications, one of the ones that I've quoted in a lot of the grant applications is a man on Huffington Post that said, why are there's so many, Oscar-winning films, like My Left Foot, for instance, that are played by celebrities, and why are these typical actors clutching the Academy Award when it could be a person with a disability? And they talked about all of the difficulties with that, and they used this analogy of in the 30s, most of us said, well, African American people, they can't run long distance. They're only good for, speed, which is ridiculous, right? And so then we started bringing in more African-American long-distance runners, and now people say, well, of course, they can be long-distance runners, right? Because we have that example to show us.
Yeah, and it's really about the training and the possibilities and access to being able to even do this kind of work. That's a big deal. I was on Ann Fisher with the Ohio talking about this previously, and a big thing is that if you're not given the opportunities young, or even when you're in any developmental stage, you're not going to have a confidence to want to do this, and so it's really about, through education, being able to provide these opportunities, which is really, really great. Like, we haven't really announced it yet, but we're going to be starting a residency with Bridgeway Academy. It's happening at this time. There's a writer from the Third House that's working with them to develop stories about bullying in school. And understanding what that means. There's a lot of confusion around it, of course, with middle schoolers. And then we'll be coming in November and helping them learn how to be filmmakers. Like, we'll be targeting certain people to shoot and edit and act. And that way, as a young preteen, you've had this chance to see what a film looks like, to know, is this something you would want to do, right? And not even being given that chance at a young age, it would be very difficult to be, oh, I'm now 20, could I be in a film? Like, why? Like, it's a kind of dialogue we wouldn't have.
And what? Oh, go ahead.
So I work at Bridgeway Academy,
Oh, yeah.
and I am the art teacher there in one of the classrooms, and I'm just curious, the whole time you've been talking, I'm thinking about like how I can bring what you're saying and what I'm learning in here to my classroom so that I can better prepare my students to be more creative, because the problem that I'm having is they want to be told what to do, because they've, through early intervention and through their entire time,
yes. The initiative
through ABA
isn't
therapy,
there.
they need models, they need prompting, I can't give them art utensils and they just be like, got it, okay, let's start going.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions that you've maybe learned through this process.
I think the modeling, so we were going to provide a modeling sheet.
Like the video modeling?
Video modeling sheet, I think that's a really good place to start, because even with like college kids that I deal with, we have to, we show them through example. And so showing a small film and then saying, okay, so here's what's happening in this clip. All right, now let's assign roles and find a way through some kind of modeling exercise to get them more involved in acting and portraying a character or something.
Yeah, I think about this a lot late at night, because I think, how do you teach initiative? How do you teach independent idea generation, right? And so I teach my son writing. I taught him to read and I taught him to type, right? So what I've done with the writing, which is similar to like building ideas, right, is I'll tell him what many people may write about or say about this, and I'll give him some hook ideas for his writing, and then I'll wait a day, right? And it's almost like I gave him a lecture, but then I'm also giving him ideas, because he cannot generate his own ideas, but he's listened to me, and then he's approximating generating his own idea if the next day he's deciding to type what I've talked about. So it's almost like not a delayed prompt.
It's just like that resonating.
Yeah, it's like I'm giving him a lecture about the concepts and he's internalizing it, and it's emanating from him, but it's not directly saying, type this, write this, right? So I'll just say, like he's writing about why objects are not important to him. So I was talking about, well, there's status with objects, there's entertainment, there's sentimental value, there's functional value because they're tools. So there's all these things you want to write about, right? And then I wait a day, and then he does.
I think the space thing is really important. That's hard to negotiate, because even, like I said, I teach at the college level, and I ask a question, and then you're like, okay?
Right, right. And they're college
there's
level.
silence here. I really want to jump in and go ahead and get the, like, but the space is really, really important. Like, the space we've given Kelsey and PJ to kind of grow, this is probably helping them generate in certain ways. We have a friend who has autism, that she was very sheltered and went through all kinds of classes that probably weren't appropriate for her as a young adult, and then she finally decided she's just moving out on her own, and she was just going to be on her own without parents and grandparents, all this other stuff. And after about a year of that, she called us up and she had said something, and I turned to Nikki, I was like, did Bev just make a joke? Like, she just made a joke. Like, I've never heard
She's
her
in her
tell.
50s, right?
No. She's mid-30s.
Oh, she's in her 30s.
She's mid-30s, yeah. And so, like, and she's like made a
Wow.
joke, and she's never made a joke. And I was like, it's the space. It's the, like, she was finally, she'd heard jokes, she knew about jokes, and then she was given her own time to think about, okay, I want to get sarcastic.
Yeah, I'm loving
Proof
that.
positive, they continue to develop
Yes,
after age
yeah.
5.
Yes, the brain plasticity piece that continues, right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm experiencing that in the classroom right now. Is like we have students that, and they're so curious about each other, and like before that, they didn't realize that they've been in the same class with the same students for 3 years now, and now they're like, that's my friend. Like, they'll recognize each other in the community.
wow.
And we just had a student make a joke the other day, and we were like, that was hilarious. Like, how
Oh my
did
gosh.
you?
So there's like a
Like,
mirror face thing
yeah,
going
and
on there
it's-
where they're
So
finally.
that's why I want to use that. I want them to know that, like, keep making connections. Like, it's okay, because a lot of times they'll maybe go overboard. They kiss their parents, so they're like, I'm gonna kiss my friend. You're like,
Right,
whoa,
they can't,
whoa,
yeah,
this is
uh-huh.
school. We can't be kissing everyone.
Different context,
So
yeah.
like, yeah, I just want to be able to encourage that. And so I
Sure.
think that was a good idea.
Yeah,
The prompting and then the space before the actual product. So
Yes.
I'm writing that down as my
Oh,
lesson plan.
yeah.
Awesome.
yeah.
I want to speak to your initial question, which is how do I hand art materials to children and see them feel successful? And I come from an early childhood background. I'm a creative arts specialist with kids with special needs as well as typically developing kids. And we actually start children in our center at 6 weeks with art materials. And so by the time they reach preschool, they're comfortable with those materials.
Right.
And they may not be creating works of art, but they have experience. They understand what the materials are for, what the materials can do for them. And the early childhood content standards include initiative, curiosity. Those are approaches to learning those are going to just cover everything for the rest of your life. If you have curiosity and initiative coming in.
I think
I'd like
Audrey's
to pick your
keynote.
brain, Therese. I'd like to pick your brain later because I
Okay.
teach 3rd grade and I feel like they are lacking that readiness to
But
create.
and that waiting to be told what to do is, for me, the most frightening thing I can
Yes,
see
yes.
in a group of kids.
Yes.
And adults.
And
Yes.
adults.
Average kids too.
But-
Yes.
Yeah.
Allowing time, experience,
Safety, comfort.
repetitive situation, the 6 R's, repetition, rhythm, relationships, all those things are so important to the art making process or to any kind of learning process.
Well, and I think that Audrey's keynote was very important where she's talking about, the way that brains develop differently. Like, we're all missing right now a great performer who's telling his story about how when he was young, he had dexterity problems and his parents put him
Yeah.
through therapy for hand dexterity. And now he's probably one of the most impressive guitar players I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who went to Guitar Institute in California, and I was like, you are an amazing guitar player. And then I see this guy, and I'm like, oh my,
Wow, yeah.
your hands have developed in such a way. And so you just don't know how those connections are going to develop. So as early as you can introduce any of these things, role playing, using a certain kind of marker or a paint or writing in a certain way, you don't know what connection is going to happen. And so we just have to find a way to get those into the schools earlier. And this is still unexplored territory, it's very new.
One thing I see with that Audrey's doing with Liam is that she gives him a history, and so maybe a history in art will give them a foundation to start with. Like if you're looking at collage, maybe looking at Dada or something, and I know these are third graders, but if they're seeing it, then maybe they can replicate it, and if they can replicate it, then they can come up with something on their own.
You know, when you teach writing, you know, often just have a prompt and say, you know, the best day of my life was. And,
Yes.
you know, there are art prompts, you know, there are books at Barnes and Noble of art prompts, you know, draw your favorite food, draw your, you know.
And don't make it an open-ended abstract answer. Have something rooted in complete reality, something tangible.
I mean, even in the college, like the first level beginning drawing class, you spend a week with a bunch of paper bags wadded up on the floor.
I hated that.
And, or bicycles, or
hated
balls,
drawing
or
those
something,
bags.
but they're like, okay, now pick up a pencil and draw all those bags. Now pick up a crayon and draw all those bags, right? And you gotta learn these things. And these are
Before you
20-year-olds.
get to draw the nude.
Right, yeah. Before you get to do anything else, so it's like, you have to learn how to use all these things and make these marks. My biggest thing is something I'm very interested in is film and our education in school. We spend so much time learning how to write, and we read books, and we learn what is good writing, what is bad writing, and we communicate through writing so much. Our culture is changing to a much more visual culture and media culture, right? And so how do we put that into the classrooms? How do we say, okay, you're gonna read, you would have read this book, how do you watch this and
In an
unpack
era
it?
where they're cutting arts out of the school experience,
Exactly.
it's horrifying.
I wanted to speak to the filmmaking process in terms of social capital. Because when you sent out the call for actors, and my
December
actors,
event,
and my actors all got this opportunity to be a part of a film. It's a huge thing in the world of social capital. They could say, I was called to audition for a film. And that whole process was like, no, what do they want me to do? And then I would tell them, it's just like everybody auditions.
When they were thinking about their role.
Yeah.
And then they were meeting each other too. But what you had said made me think about mentioning what I forgot, I was gonna say it earlier and I forgot, now you helped me remember. Because I'm really interested in how to jumpstart someone's career, right? So, and it's always meandering and it never goes exactly as planned, right? And it's not conventional. So, for instance, Andy's keynote speech yesterday got him another gig where he's going to do a soundtrack for another film. And even though we're looking at Matt and Nikki as typical people, they both have physical disabilities, right? So here, them working with me and then Aaron knowing about them working with me helped Aaron tell Bridgeway, well, why don't you look at Matt and Nikki Swift because they're doing this? And then that's furthering their careers further. So I think people with disabilities, they don't have that 6 degrees of separation, right? I mean, they have like 30 degrees of separation, right? And they don't have that social capital, but if you help build that, then we don't know where they'll end up. But it's still, the brain's like an experience-dependent organ. It'll give them an experience, but it may help their career.
So I don't want to hold you all for lunch. There's a lunch that's happening. We're a few minutes over.
Oh, are we? Okay,
So
I didn't even know.
that's okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have questions, we'll be around at the lunch and whatnot.
Yeah.
You're welcome.